Well, welcome to a special episode of the Edufuturists podcast. Slightly different setup this one because it's lots of snippets of conversations from the brilliant festival in Liverpool. We've managed to interview a whole host of special guests as part of this event, and we spoke to them about the work that they're doing, why they're exhibiting at Brilliant, why they're in Liverpool, and the work that they're doing. So, yeah. We hope you enjoy these conversations, a whole host of different little snippets of people that we've interviewed as part of the Brilliant Festival.
And you know what? If there's ones that you just think, you know what, I just want to hear a little bit more, like Ben said, just let's have a think, let's explore, and we'd love to carry on the conversation with some of these, if not all, but any particular one, ping back to us as a response to the newsletter that comes out every week or on social media. We look forward to hearing from you and carrying these conversations on. Host Brilliant.
Yeah. Enjoy these little snippets on the Edufuturists podcast. So we're really pleased to be joined by James Fraser-Murison. Thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about you and your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, it's good to see you again, chaps. Thank you, Martin, for being a part of this brilliant festival here in Liverpool. Since we last spoke, probably 5 years ago now, I've come out of mainstream education. I'm now proud to say I'm director of my own company, Fraser-Esports, where I'm working to use the online esports BTEC that I help contribute to, and effectively now target some of the 130,000 homeschooled students that aren't in mainstream, whether that's because they're alternative provision or SEND or reduced hours, and give them an opportunity in a subject that is really engaging, contemporary and exciting. On top of that, I also wear a slightly different hat where I'm Director of Education for a company called ESG Gaming, where myself, Lee and Nathan and many others, we've created free workshops, and we've created a dome using VR headsets and virtual reality to target people over the age of 50 to help combat social isolation and slow down the onset of dementia, because we all know that there's an awful lot more that needs to be done, and this is just the start of that. So I'm doing something entirely different, but I'm loving it and already seeing the good dividends from that.
That's a really interesting point, actually. I think gaming has existed for a long period of time. I'm not a gamer. I think sensible soccer, Italia 90,
Perfect.
and FIFA might have been the last time I did it.
Maybe early FIFA, not FIFA 25 or whatever it is.
No, FIFA 19 or FIFA 1, I think was
FIFA
the last
1.
time
FIFA 1987.
It was back when it was called FIFA. It's not even called FIFA anymore.
No,
That's another
So
story.
I think actually those people have been in. So gaming is obviously a £1 billion industry and dwarfs film and everything else.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw some research, and we do this all the time. I'll find the research, we'll put it in the show notes at some point, that actually says that the business is and that sector is only going to grow because those people now that were playing from a younger age, it's not like any other sport where it's you get to a certain age, 30, age is caught up with you, you're not going to play anymore. Actually, the aging demographic will continue to invest, and it will only grow. They will then support their children and their children, and actually that bit of research around gaming but VR and those people that are above 50, I think is a real positive step now.
Well, there's a couple of things I think at this point to say that the average age of a gamer is around late 30s to early 40s, which kind of says it all. And the qualification that I've helped put together and the work that I'm pushing out online is not about making you a better gamer. It is it's not a gaming qualification in that sense. It is about the industry that you've just mentioned. It's good for everyone that I don't work for the World Economic Forum for loads of reasons, but they say that next year in 2030, team building, communication, problem solving and logistics are 4 out of 10 skills needed in the modern day workplace, whatever that means.
Right.
I can give them that through this qualification. They can gain it through other qualifications, but I can also do it through this BTEC. It's contemporary, it's engaging, and it's the third rail, which everyone doesn't always want to touch, where it's fun. And if you can do all of those three things, then you're on to a winner, right? And I'm now also doing that with people over the age of 50.
Yeah.
We just picked 50, because when we picked 60, those under it said they wanted to be me, and when whatever. So we picked 50, and it's going really well. I'm also now working with a professional footballer who plays for Manchester United called Hannah, and she's hit the grand old age of 30, and she's looking at plans beyond her football playing career. And she wants to get involved in the gaming industry and the esports industry. Again, not as a gamer, but about this $1 billion industry aside from that. And I like you, I'm fortunate enough to give loads of talks. a gentleman who's a producer of Love Island, of all things, came to talk to me at the end of a talk in London.
Are you going on? Are you going on?
No spoilers. I can neither confirm nor deny, but there is a reason I've got a tan, a fake one. Is this gentleman, producer from Love Island, said, I don't know what esports is. I've just sat in on your talk. I think I get it. But I am looking for VT operators, camera operators, editors, floor managers, and I'm told that the esports industry can give me that as much as the traditional media route. So it's all about different alternatives. It's all about routes.
It's so good. And interestingly in that, obviously we're at Brilliant today,
yeah.
and that conversation that Martin's curating is around how it's about early years to careers, and what you're talking about there is getting people who are young into that space, but then giving them an opportunity to go beyond that. What's really exciting is obviously we're talking about the trends today that we published way back in July, but actually as we're moving into this conversation, what does it look like going forward? One of the elements that comes up there is about lifelong learning. So the third element there is about lifelong learning. What does it mean to ensure that people can learn and grow? And what are you seeing there in terms of like the skill set for those people that are a little bit older or maybe going into a new area around that thing around lifelong learning?
So there's different ways to answer it, I guess. So lifelong learning is different things to different people, which is no bad thing either. We all know, and I don't have the figures in front of me, that students these days, by the time they hit 25, 26, 27, will have already had 3 jobs, say, 3 paid jobs. What does that mean? It means turbulence, it means change, it also means transferable skills, which is always a cliche, but absolutely something that I believe in. So I hope that I'm part of a curriculum that addresses transferable skills and needs for the workplace. Because you're also now competing in an incredibly ruthless environment due to AI, which we've talked about. You know, we've all seen some of the insanity that goes on LinkedIn. You know, I'm a director of, you know, super cloud thinking and whatever. It's not a thing, I don't know what that means. What does that mean? So you've got to be able to be competitive and demonstrate your skill set. And it's got to be adaptable to all of these different companies that are looking for the best of the best. And I think what I'm hoping to do with the younger age is to bring them in through gamification, which is, you know, you said, Steve, has been around for centuries and then some, right? So that's an easier win than most. And also, we found that post-COVID, the older age group, 40s, 50s, even 60-year-olds, they want something different. They've seen the light, they want to change, they want to learn, they want to adapt, they want to learn about AI, they want to learn about social media and creative media and esports and whatever. So to be able to offer all of that at a slightly, you know, across all the gamut and have it at every type of available position, I think is brilliant. I think it's really, really good. I'm not sure that answered the question.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and I think linking into that holistic, one of the other trends is around holistic education, at that whole point of just getting a qualification, absolutely fantastic, but can you then articulate, can you storytell, can you apply to a context, can you show empathy, understanding, all of those, that whole thing of never more important of human intelligence in the world of artificial intelligence. I was meeting with a tech company and they said, we are reducing our coders and our developers from 5 to maybe 2 or 3. We will pay them astronomically more and we will use AI for the rest. And it's a case of, right, so how does that person stand alone of, I'm a brilliant coder, but can you write to a brief? Can you work? Can you have a conversation? Can you do all those things? Because if you can, AI will take that bit away. If you are basically just doing the bit that AI can now simply replace transactionally, then we need to prepare our young people and the world for really what the world has been about for a long time, and education just is starting to catch up and realise, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that today, I'm really excited about today, based purely on the speakers that are here, and they're slightly different to the normal speakers that I would sort of wander around and interact with. And AI is and will continue to do wonderful things, but, and I'm way too old to use the word riz, but yesterday and last night, you saw the personalities and the people of just having a very simple dinner, and ideally the powerful part of the 24 hours would be the people we met, the networking, the connections, the sparks, the excitement to see people again today, to have that conversation. And if you can then combine that with sensible AI work and input and prompts and whatever, then you're going to be a far more powerful person, individual and business because of that. But also, worth noting, do it alongside the personal touch and not instead of. I think.
And it's acknowledging that in that other part of the trend. So one of the fourth trend is about technology is an enabler. So it's enabling technology. So that's what we're saying here, is that AI isn't about replacement or displacement, although that might be part of what happens. We're talking about AI, esports, VR, cloud. All these are technologies that enable us to flourish as humans and thrive as humans, and that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I hinted at or mentioned before, I was disappointed with the lack of national or global change in education off the back of COVID. But there are these wonderful little splinter groups like us and people here today that just need to keep pushing that message. It's easy to be worried, it's easy to be fearful, it's easy to do nothing, and that's where things don't change, right? Yeah. What we want is to continue this, to continue the trends that you've set out, the 4 trends and the pillars, work with the likes of people here today, and keep having this conversation, which isn't a conversation that you can just put in AI, hit enter and leave it. Have these conversations, but work with the right people to do the right things.
For sure.
So, in the season that we're in, whatever season we call in this one, we won't call it a holiday season yet, Ben.
Not quite.
Maybe 1 to 5 or anything else. But what we're doing is we're asking quick-fire questions at the end of every episode.
Okay.
Quick-fire, so get ready for it. I'll go first, then Ben, and then me, so there'll be 3. The first one is, if you could change one thing about education overnight, what would it be?
Okay, that's a very quick fire. I would like to live in a world with an unlimited CPD budget where senior leaders also get to come to events like this, as opposed to send middle managers or teachers off for a wish list that is never going to be met because they haven't got any money, and those barriers are removed and these conversations take place across all levels.
Love it. What's the most exciting educational trend that you see emerging?
Well, if done correctly, and all the moral panics are put to one side, then it's AI, I think, because the opportunity and the positive revolution, if I can use that, I think, without everyone getting alarmed, is immense. It's amazing. I use it every day, every other day. Some incredibly complex things, some things that I just kind of like chuck in there to see what it does and come out with. I love it. I think it's great. Let's again encourage younger people to sensibly use it to make their lives easier, reduce teaching workload, give people opportunities. So AI, I think, there you go.
Final one. Who is your biggest inspiration in education?
It's an easy one because I love him, and unfortunately he's not with us anymore. So Ken Robinson, tick, cliche, yeah, the guy's a legend. The world's most famous TED Talk was 10, 15 years ago that he did the first one. I think we all know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
He said, when he got on stage, he doesn't always know what his son's up to, but he knows that his son is running an online empire of sorts in his bedroom on a PC doing this, and this. Good God, like, look at where we are now, 15 or so years on, and students and young people doing that just off their phone now. And I think he was obviously on it and got it, and sadly, as I say, not with us anymore, but he could see the options and the power and the availability and the scope of technology back then for young people. And I look at what we could be doing or should be doing now, and I hope that certainly with what I'm doing with esports, there are way more young people creating their own online empires that we, as older people, need to understand and adjust to give them the opportunity they deserve.
Love it. Well, thanks, James, for joining us in the Edufuturists booth at the Brilliant Festival. Enjoy the rest of the day, and I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
Thank you. I've had a brilliant time. Thank you.
Well, we are pleased to be joined in the Edufuturists booth at Brilliant Festival with a friend of the podcast, somebody we have met. I've met twice. Steve's met once. But feels like a friend. Winner of AI Pioneer at Edufuturists Uprising 2024, and that's Matthew. Matthew, do you want to give us a little bit of an introduction to you and what you're about? We're going to speak into the
orange mic. Yeah. Okay. So my name is Matthew Wemyss. I'm the assistant school director at the Cambridge School of Bucharest. My main role is teaching and learning in the secondary, but passion is AI and how we can integrate that to support our staff with their planning, and also our students and try new things out with AI in the classroom with them.
And obviously AI has seen a pretty big boom. we had dinner last night and we were talking about different things of how do you stay current, and I think you just said, actually, not current, how do you get through the day and you go, actually, do you know, I'm not sure if there's anything new that I'm doing, I'm doing some really, really good stuff, and then all of a sudden, within an hour, you've done some new stuff with the students and you go, actually, there's a new application to context here that I've really found, and this is I think, are you getting that inspiration from obviously yourself, but also the students bringing different ideas of what that looks like in their world and the context of that in terms of learning rather than teaching?
Well, the great thing is, because every time there's a new announcement or an update, something like the Google Notebook LM podcasts, I get to generate a podcast, give it to the students and get immediate feedback from them whether they like it or not. And sometimes seeing them interact with AI as well, like putting them in front of a chatbot or giving them some freedom to do a project, and then seeing how they go back and forth and what skills they need to be able to get the best out of the AI as well. So it's nice seeing that firsthand every day as well.
So this is not like it doesn't seem like a fad. It feels like it's something that's embedded, and I know that you are writing material around this, you're sharing a lot around the world. Obviously you're in Bucharest, but you're in Liverpool today, travelling all around talking about this stuff. Like, if you were to kind of summarise how it's changed what you do, how would you describe that?
It's allowed me to be better at my job, and that is only a net benefit for the students, because it's allowed me to do a lot of things more efficiently. And I was chatting to people last night and just saying that I'm the kind of teacher that would have an amazing idea like 10 minutes before a class. But in previous years, there's no way I can make that awesome thing happen just before the lesson. Now I can be so responsive to the students. And if they ask for something, I can almost either go away and replan, or I can even pause the smartboard, jump on my computer, rework the lesson and just be immediately responsive and just generate things that they need as and when. And I think the option, we've introduced some chatbots this year for my year 13 students, and just 20 minutes a week, I do the lessons all week. They get 20 minutes with a chatbot, trained on the lessons I've done that week, and they just get to delve into their own misconceptions on a personal level for 20 minutes and ask questions they wouldn't ask in front of their peers. And they've really found that so beneficial. And it's a very small use, tiny little time with AI, but it's focused time, and it's built around what I think they need as their teacher as well.
I think that's a really good point. I think it's all that thing of, in education often, and I don't think it's great to hear that this might be unique, it might not be. There might be loads of different people listening going, well, we do that. I think it's that creating that opportunity to try, to explore, to apply to context. Because in education we know that actually it's too rigid at times, where we have to give and deliver this curriculum to you so you can regurgitate this in the exam. That doesn't apply really real life context, application of failure, trying, learning, and doing all, and also the passion elements of, like you said, if they find something they really love, that will then take it, and it doesn't talk about homework, it's about taking that, extending it beyond the four walls of a college or a school building to then say, how can we actually apply this to the real world? I think that's what real world actually is. It's finding different passion pieces, applying it and taking it away and magnifying those different things. And I think education often is just shackled by such rigidity that actually we don't get an opportunity, like you say, it's only a small snippet. How many small snippets and captures of those? But do we actually get an education now as a teacher?
Well, I've just finished a really cool project with Year 9, because I had a Year 9 class this year, and we just started it. They did a self-assessment. They got their outcomes of that. And usually you do a self-assessment at teaching, you just do the same lesson with a bit of differentiation. But they then had a chatbot built where they could put what they needed to work on. And I had 78 kids in Year 9 all working on different projects, all on different rubrics, all based on their level. So kids that were brand new to, we did it on Canvas, so all the kids that were brand new to it were working on some basic skills. And then in the room I had people that had used Canva for years and were doing more advanced video editing and things like that. But I could never have done that before using AI. There's no way I could have. It would have taken me hours to make 78 different rubrics for the kids, and also to have the chatbot trained where they could upload samples of their work and it would give them feedback based on their rubric, where again I gave them the final feedback, but they were constantly getting feedback and constantly being pushed, and it was not replacing me as a teacher, but it almost acted like as a coach. Okay, you've got 4 lessons, this is what you want to learn, here's 4 lessons broken down for you as a guide so you can master those things. So that was the first example for me where I've actually probably used it to do something new, because that's saying like using new tools to do old stuff. This is the first time where I felt like I was probably entering into that new territory where I kind of, because I played the sound clip to the school director, and it was a year 9 class, absolutely silent, and I've not had that in 14 years. All I could hear was keyboards clicking, and because everyone was so engaged, and I was just circling and doing a little bit. How's this? Doing some skills and things like that, but it was something new for me, and I was trying to see if I felt comfortable being a guide.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's that change in educator role of, it's not saying we don't need teachers, but teachers' roles shift in this space, become facilitators and guides. They become almost curators of content and sharing that information, and then learners kind of go down their path. Whereas when we went to school, and certainly when we taught, most of us, or I know you still teach, we crossed over to the dark side, but a lot of what we were doing was trying to get that information out to them and funnel it into their brain so they remember it. Actually now, with this knowledge-rich world, not a knowledge-rich curriculum, a knowledge-rich world, and information being so accessible, what changes is that the role of the teacher is as a guide and a support, and to help them fact check, help them navigate that and see that in space. Is that what you're seeing?
My big thing that I felt weird, I didn't realise how much I talked in a lesson until I stopped talking in a lesson, and it was weird for me just to be almost quiet. And even after we got to the second lesson, and the kids were like, I couldn't really think of a starter because they were doing different things. So the first lesson, the kids called me out on it, said, what are we doing this for? This isn't like, they could see I was like clutching at straws, just trying to stick to this structure. And after the second lesson, I just sent them out a prompt that they put into the bot. So they all got starters based on their own skills as well. And I just did that for the rest of the time as well. So it was weird. It was weird for me at first, just being quiet and not being like, again, it's not an ego thing, but I went from being the center of attention to the project and the skills being more a focus.
And I think Ben's mentioned that it's going to take a massive cultural shift individually, organisationally and systemically to shift away from delivery of education and delivery of learning, the teacher being the front and the forefront, to actually being the bit of the facilitator, the sage on the stage rather than...
And there was a couple of kids that struggled with it. Like, I don't think... Some of them got it and could speak to the chatbot quite naturally, but it made me realise as a teacher that the kids themselves aren't particularly great at asking questions, and also they weren't used to like asking because they wouldn't put their hand up and ask the teacher a difficult question in front of the class. That's like a taboo thing. So I was trying to prompt them to almost ask the questions they would like to ask me that would put me on the spot, ask them to the bot, because that's more of a personal one-to-one reaction. So I think there does need to be a bit more upskilling on the kids' questioning skills, because they're not very used to questioning the source of the knowledge in a classroom, because it's a bit taboo.
I think so. I think that you said it. That is it just substituting, or actually is it redefining and modifying what we've always done in terms of our teaching and also the learning process? I think it's that conversation of how do we ensure that we are supporting learners to understand that if they've been through the education system for a long period of time, that they understand that learning is going to change, because that's very different. It will be more demanding and will come with a bit more cognitive overload for them at times, but ultimately I think it will shift their understanding and their quality and their development of learning.
It did take them a couple of lessons to get used to it, because I only teach them one period a week, so the other 39 periods they're just doing the regular kind of lesson style. So it was a bit weird for them having that independence to begin with, and so that took a bit of a while. But I would say that if I didn't know there was some kids that needed more support. They're like some kids who had special educational needs that needed more support, and I was differentiating for them with some like using ChatGPT and things like that in the background. But it freed me up to spend more time with the kids that needed one-to-one support, and I could spend a good 10 minutes with a kid instead of like what in the average class, if you divide it by the number of kids, like 30 seconds in the classroom really. So I could have more impactful conversations with the kids because the other ones were working independently.
Yeah, totally. I hear it. As part of our Edufuturists series that we're on at the moment, you'll know. We do 3 quick-fire questions, and I know you're a listener, so you might know these questions. You might have already prepped for these. Who knows? Who knows? So I'll start the first one. Steve will ask the second, and I'll come back to a third. So the first question is, if you could change one thing about education overnight, what would it be?
Exams, get rid of them.
That we've interviewed a couple of people so far today, and I won't give too much, but that's a growing trend even from the quick response answers. So yeah, we're all for that. What's the most exciting educational trend that you've seen emerging?
I think the conversations that AI has been a catalyst to have a conversation about what education means and what it means to be human, and that for me is that it's opened up that conversation about those skills that kids need more of. That, like, if you think about your curriculum, are you really focusing on group work? Are you really focusing on critical thinking? Or are you just trying to teach to the test? And I think it's opened up a Pandora's box of what are we actually doing that's going to help students thrive in this like potentially new like AI human combo in the future.
Love it. And the final question is, who's your biggest inspiration in education?
Ooh. That's a good one. Not thought about this one. Probably listens from it.
Hear me if you want, that's fine.
Yes, Ben, you're my inspiration. No, I'm trying to think. There's lots of inspiration out. I'm trying to think of names now. No, I can't think of any. I'm inspired by everybody. Everyone on LinkedIn inspires me daily.
Yes.
Absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. But yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, mate. Well done on all the work, and congratulations again on AI Pioneer Edufuturists winner 2024. So yeah, great to have you on again, mate. Thank you.
Cheers. Hi and welcome to another interview at Brilliant Festival for the Edufuturists podcast. We are pleased to be joined by Sean and Lauren. I'll let them tell us where they're from, because this is pretty cool. This is the first time that we've had somebody from this type of organisation on. We've done over 300 episodes of the Edufuturists podcast, and this is the first time for somebody from this kind of organisation. Sean, Lauren, tell us who you are and what you do.
So I'm Sean, I'm Senior Conservation Education Manager at Chester Zoo. So I work with schools, colleges and universities from across the country and indeed around the world to inspire a future generation of conservationists.
Yeah, and I'm Lauren, and I'm Digital Learning Manager at Chester Zoo, and I focus all on our sort of digital offer for educators, supporting educators digitally, making films, animations, podcasts even with young people, the whole breadth of what we can do digitally with multimedia, offering online learning for schools and the public actually.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, so absolutely love it. I think my kids are big fans of Chester Zoo. You know, it's a little bit of a travel for us. I won't lie. I'm over in Yorkshire, but my kids are very, very young. The
Free-Bat Forest.
Is an interesting thing, especially for the first time. So that's a learning experience of what it's like to have bats literally flying past your ears and everything else. But I suppose, is yours, in terms of your education process, there's digital content, there's delivery of learning, teaching learning, but also is it learning by doing? Is there a hands-on element and an actual application of context in terms of the zoo education process?
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where children are so passionate about wildlife and the environment. The Fruit-Bat Forest that you mentioned is a perfect example. You can walk through that exhibit and have 400 bats flying right past your head. So everything we're doing is about connecting those young people with the zoo. It's about connecting them with the natural world and the world around them, and about giving them those kind of skills, knowledge and experiences that they can kind of really take that. And we do that through kind of our workshops and our activities, but Lauren kind of really leads on some of the more digital elements of that and how we make that happen.
Yeah, so I mean, we do very practical things in terms of actually applying some skills in nature. We run workshops, as Sean has said, actually developing green spaces, but we also encourage young people to use skills in multimedia. So it might be making a podcast, making some films about conservation. And then one of the reasons we're here today is we're exploring games and gamification as well. And we find that young people learn through play, and we really encourage that strand of work throughout all of the ways that we engage with young people. But specifically with gamification, we find that it's a really useful way to explore quite difficult topics sometimes with conservation, but in a playful and safe space way. So that's what we're here today to kind of share with the audience.
And is that unique in terms of Chester Zoo's approach to education, the delivery, the skills development?
I'm guessing quite a while ago it was, we have our visitors, if they travel from the south, a lot of people have come up and said, oh, the north exists, but if they travel from the south, often they will go to their local zoo and to do their learning and everything else. Is what you're doing now trying to increase the footprint and the demographic of who you're actually reaching as an organisation?
So we're really lucky in the sense that we have around about 2 million visitors a year come and visit the zoo in person, but we're able to, through our education programmes, to engage with people online both nationally and work with schools and colleges across the UK, but also internationally as well through kind of digital learning resources, videos, things like our virtual zoo lives and our virtual zoo days. It's kind of all part of a wider kind of strategy. So our conservation plan, one of the key facets of it is by 2031 we want to have empowered 10 million people to live more sustainably, and through all the different elements of our education work is about trying to do that, is that empowering that next generation's conservationists.
And that sounds super important, that it's about, yes, it's learning about animals, it's learning about sustainability, it's about the environment, but it's that broader conversation. Like, obviously we talked about, and you've seen in front of you, we've got our trends booklet from this year, which one of the trends that we talked about is about holistic education, and it feels very much like what you're trying to do at Chester Zoo is about, rather than you need to learn this for the science curriculum, you need to learn this for a maths curriculum, it's like, and talking about nature as well, and that more broad conversation about how and why learners learn the way they do. I presume that's kind of part of the strategy, right?
Exactly. Like, so young people are so passionate about the biodiversity and conservation and sustainability and climate crises, lump them all in together, and they're one really serious challenge and one really serious problem. And actually, it's not something to learn about in a science lesson, or it's not something to learn about in a maths lesson or in a geography lesson. It's something that is so systemically important, it needs to be taught across the entire curriculum. And the real strength with something like conservation is it's a topic that can be taught in every subject. There is always a link into talking about conservation, and actually it's a real hook.
Yeah.
And so I remember being in school, and I wasn't necessarily always the best student because all I really cared about was wildlife and animals, and if it wasn't to do with animals I didn't care. But actually we can find those students that care about wildlife and animals and hook them in every single subject.
Yeah, we found it's a really adds a lot of meaning to young people. You know, when they might be learning something in maths, they don't always necessarily have something that they connect with in life, but through using conservation, wildlife, and some of the causes that we are passionate about, we've had some amazing case studies and feedback from teachers and students about how it's become a really memorable experience because they've become so passionate about the actual core subject that they haven't necessarily even known they're learning maths and English skills all the time, because it's kind of done through stealth a little bit. So yeah, it's really exciting when you see the young people getting really inspired and ignited with this passion, and they're learning really amazing skills along the way as well.
I think thinking of another one of our trends in regards to lifelong learning, that in terms of your 10 million, that might be the young people, probably younger than us, no offence, you're probably younger than us, but it's actually re-engaging and re-infusing some of those adults that are going to support their young children, or just an older demographic that want to go through a learning process, that maybe have been inspired by some of the wonderful stuff in terms of the documentary stuff that you see, but also that engagement. If you really want to think about climate change, sustainability and conservation, that's going to take the whole of the population rather than just the young people coming through.
Exactly, it is that whole societal approach, and like you say, that 10 million it includes the sort of 140,000 young people we work with through our schools programmes each year, but it also it's the entire 2 million people that visit the zoo. It's the people we can reach out to, and the idea being that we often talk about kind of green skills and green careers, but actually it's about making sure that everyone, whether they're going through school, whether it's part of their job, like they know those tangible actions that they can take to make a positive difference for the planet, make a positive difference for wildlife.
Yeah.
Love it. And I think it's a really brilliant, the irony, see what I did there? It's a really brilliant way to kind of see that this is about wherever age and stage, if you're interested in this. In fact, actually, if you're not interested in it, you probably should be. So it's that whole conversation of how do we bring the conversation about conservation to the front, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We have a saying really at the zoo that everyone is a conservationist. Just that you don't have to be a scientist or a geographer. Everyone has a place in conservation. Whether you end up working in marketing, whether you end up working in teaching, there's a place where you can sit within conservation, because the world belongs to everybody at the end of the day. So yeah, not only are we empowering young people, but we work extensively with teachers as well, with CPD programs. We've just launched our teacher network this year, where we're going to be bringing together teachers to share ideas with each other, but also explore the zoo with us, and all the ways that we can connect to conservation and the environment sustainability through that network.
I think we're engaging with, we reached out through our website through an organisation running digital boot camps, and hopefully they're not a competitor of yours, but we've been invited down on the 1st of November to London Zoo, and they're going to have that digital element of actually what that will, and ultimately yes, it might be a different zoo, but ultimately I think it's like education. We're trying to improve education opportunities and learning for everybody across the UK and beyond, rather than just the demographic. I think a lot of time is spent in London, and I think we need to step out of, there's life beyond the Watford Gap, but ultimately I think that might be something where ultimately those kind of activities are going on.
And we work really collaboratively. Zoos, both within the UK, was part of the British and Irish Association of Zoos and Aquaria, so we work very closely with ZSL and London Zoo, but we work internationally as well, so there's a European equivalent where we'll work with zoos and conservation organisations across Europe, and indeed internationally as well, so throughout the whole world. So we have our kind of network and area of the world up here, and all of those other zoos around the world we can work collaboratively between us to inspire an entire planet of people.
Yeah, for sure. So we always finish our podcasts with 3 quick-fire questions. I'll do first one, Steve does one, then I'll do one, okay? So either both of you can answer, or you can just one person can answer. It's totally fine. So the first question is, if you could change one thing about education overnight, what would it be?
You go first.
Change one thing about education. I don't know what to answer. You answer.
I think if we've got a curriculum and assessment review going on at the moment, and one of the things that would be really nice to see it is that biodiversity and conservation and sustainability literacy being a really key part of something children have to learn in school. I remember it's almost 20 years to the day that I started my GCSEs, and there was no climate change biodiversity content in them whatsoever. 20 years on, there's still very little, or it's a small part of a section, and children are crying out for it, young people are crying out for it, and ultimately our planet is crying out for it. So making more biodiversity and sustainability literacy as part of a core part of education would be something I would.
And I know they're quick fire, but I think one of the points there is often the exams, as we have, the endpoint assessment, are written a long period of time ago. Their context never really changes and is applied. I think try a varying assessment method of project-based learning, understanding actually you can then apply that to a real life and real world example. Right now I've seen it still write a letter to who writes a handwritten letter still. I think it's that context of actually applying to what's going on and what's really important. We never really did it 20 years ago. We need to start doing it because there's been a missed opportunity for such a long period of time. Okay, my question is, what is the most exciting educational trend that you are seeing emerging currently?
I mean, obviously technology is one of the biggest things that is happening within education. There's a lot of exciting things going on. I'm really conscious that things don't become gimmicks. So I can't really talk necessarily about a trend, but I think, how we can engage using digital but to benefit students in a practical way is really important. We can't get away from the fact that we live in a digital world, so we need to evolve with the times. My talk later on is going to talk a little bit about that actually young people now are engaged in making stuff all the time, whether they're making games themselves or making different live shows on YouTube and stuff. So we can't ignore the fact that young people are the creators themselves, so we need to change the system a little bit to allow that to happen and actually encourage that within young people and start listening to what their skills are. And that's kind of the exciting trend, actually, the young people coming up through the generations now and what they can bring.
Love it. Final one. Who's your biggest inspiration in education?
I'm going to have a little bit of a cop-out answer and give the next generation is my inspiration. Okay. So every year we run an event at the zoo called our Schools Takeover Day, where we invite schools that we've been working with to come in with a number of their students and take over our education programme. So we'll support them by giving them tables, we'll give them resources, we'll give them a little bit of training for how to talk to the public and give them a bit of confidence. But then actually the floor is theirs. They can talk about what they're passionate about, they can talk about what they're learning about, and I think it is the single most inspiring day of the year for pretty much everyone in our education team, where we go out and we essentially hear from ourselves 20 years ago, our future selves, the future us, and that's it for us. It is, young people have the passion, they have the interests, and they become our inspiration because of what they're able to do with their voice at their age. They're incredible.
So wonderful. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. First zoo organisation and zoo education, trying to think of the word, zoo education delivery programme that we've discussed on the podcast. So yeah, it's been an absolute blast, and yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, welcome again to another brilliant conversation. We are massively pleased to be here. You might be able to hear us, you might be able to hear some drumming going on in the background or some music. That's Rock Kids going on in one of the theatres down the way. But we are pleased to be joined by Simone Roche. Simone, tell us a little bit about what you do and the organisation that you work with.
Well, I'm not a rock singer or a drummer that's playing in the theatre up the way. My name is Simone. I'm the founder of We Are Power, which is a movement of Northern Power Women and Power Collective, fundamentally passionate about accelerating gender equality, social mobility, and today we're here at Brilliant Festival to have that connectivity and enable that connection between business and education. We've built a community of over 120,000 role models, and they all want to do and give back, and what better place to be here today at Brilliant than to enable some of that and play the drums in between.
I was going to say, I didn't think they could get any louder, and all of a sudden it's just ramped up on it. So yeah, it's great that we've got a free festival and a free gig to go to. As a Yorkshireman, I don't want to ever pay for anything.
He don't pay for now.
I drink out of dirty puddles, so to get to a free gig, Kings of Leon are coming on next. Really excited by it. But so talk us about, what does that look like when you say role models? What does that look like from when you started to what that looks like now? You've built that network. Is it the ambition of people seeing themselves in what they want to go into, or what is it more than that? What does that actually look like on a day-to-day basis in regards to the organisation?
Well, I think on a day-to-day basis, it's around, there are no 2 days, probably in your world and the world of ed tech and education business, no 2 days are the same. And I suppose if I flag back to my younger self, my leaving education self, didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. And as much as I felt I was surrounded by what we would call role models now, I didn't know what I wanted to do or what direction of travel I wanted to take, and I went off and joined the Navy and had the time of my life, had an adventure, caused mischief, but made great sort of learning that didn't stop at school, if you like. I took my learning into that world of work, and if I fast forward, where are we now, 10 years ago, I got heavily involved in gender equality and social mobility. And it was always in London. Everything I was doing was in London. And one of them dodgy train journeys home once, I was coming back thinking, you know what, why are we doing this? Why am I always travelling down there? And as much as it's great and I can use that influence and that power and that connections that I've got, what would happen if we started to disrupt that a bit in the north? Because I knew for a fact that we had so many great individuals, so many great industries, so many great leaders and organisations of all sizes, of all genders, of all regions. And I wanted to shine a spotlight on that, because I wanted, whether it be my 17-year-old self, your 14-year-old daughter, happy birthday, whoever that is, I wanted them to be able to look and go, actually, there is someone that I could talk to, or there's someone I could see myself in, or there is someone, and the simplicity of careers guidance being really challenging about not even knowing what you want to ask for to do, but even knowing where to start. And I wanted to start everything with people and real life humans and enable this big community that has now grown exponentially, and not a plan. That was not the plan 10 years ago. I just wanted to changed the geography of where we were having the conversation, and now we have a phenomenal army of positive role models who all want to do good stuff, who all want to give back, and that starts so much with education and that post-education.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've got a little bit of a tenuous connection that I used to work with your brother Dave in 2 organisations, and I've seen from a distance the work that you've been doing and how it's growing and how it's ended up being recognised, and you've been being recognised in that space. But as you are kind of talking about that from an education piece, and you're talking about mentoring and coaching and role modelling, why do you think that is so vital, and why we don't have that as kind of part of mainstream education now? Because it doesn't seem to be there like we need it to be, does it?
No, I think it's often it's not there because it's time, it's money, and there's just not enough time to do what needs to be done from a wider curriculum perspective. So how can we fit this piece in? And so for me, I think it's a real responsibility of industry and business. All want the best talent in their business, so why do we not help enable that? Why do we not help unlock that? So we could get really frustrated about why it's not there and why we're not doing it, and actually a lot of, it's not saying it's not done anywhere, but how can we make it more freely available? And when we talk about coaching, mentoring, role model, we're really just talking about creating and enabling conversations to happen. What do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know about you two, but I'm still working that one out. But how can we create those conversations? How can we create those spaces where you can ask the questions that you might not have those people to ask in, whether it be your family or your community group, that there might not be just something that's sparking that interest that you want to do. But if we can open that world and make accessible brilliant people to just surely have a chat. We're good up north at chatting, right? And people want to give back. We talk about giving back, paying forward. It all sounds very altruistic, but it's really real. The amount of mentors that we have that are role models of all levels, they might only be 2 years into their careers. They might be right at the top of the game, but if we can assemble and corral and gently bring together, they want to give back because they know that will make a difference. And whether that's influence in education, whether that's influencing directly to individuals who are going through that education journey, then that's what we're trying to do, is literally join those dots and make that accessibility to real life humans doing the real life jobs, rather than just reading a leaflet, getting a Haribo and thinking that you understand what a career in industry X, Y, or Z is. Talk to real life humans.
I think it's also providing our young people with the knowledge and understanding of the courage, the curiosity to be able to ask those questions, but also how to ask those questions correctly as well, like unpicking it of ultimately, and we talk about my daughter often on the podcast, she's 4, the school was like, oh, she asked a lot of questions, and I was like, yeah, and they were like, well, and I was like, if you're going to talk to me about maybe preventing her asking questions, I was like, you're speaking to the wrong parent. I was like, absolutely not going to happen. I was like, curiosity didn't kill the cat. My daughter needs to ask questions, and your responsibility is, yeah, maybe just to calm and nurture that to be at the right time. But at the same point of, if they don't ask questions, they're only getting information that you're giving them. They're not questioning it, they're not analysing whether it's correct, they're not evaluating it. They need to be able to be prepared and supported to ask the questions in the right spaces and have the courage to do so. And I think education is stifling that and saying, no, you are passive vessels that are basically filled up. I think we need to move away from that.
And that's one of the we do these monthly virtual speed networking events online. And again, just to create that connectivity. And we always say to whoever the mentees are, this is for you to ask all the questions that you might not have anyone else to ask, or you might have asked and not got an answer. Be curious. I think I'm totally with you. That's what we're creating. We're enabling places that you can be curious, and we've got these brilliant businesses out there, whether they be like multinational organisations, whether they be grassroots organisations. What we get every day in the team is, how can I get involved, what can I do? And that's what we're doing. We're not trying to do it, we're doing it. We've created £2.2 million in social value by just creating this connectivity. So what we're going to do. We want to do more. There's no limit on this, because if we've got that energy and passion and you've got the curiosity on the other side, why would we not bridge the gap between that? So for us, this is our side hustle in some ways. This is where it started.
Yeah.
We found we had a skill and a passion and then a frustration and impatience to do something about it. So we cracked on.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you're saying it's not about what we want to do, we're doing it.
Yeah.
And we hear a lot of that in education. This is what we need to do. This is the plan. This is a strategy. This is a review we're doing of curriculum assessment. And actually, let's just do it. And it's really great to hear that that's what you are doing and are winning at. And in the trends that we talked about in that trends booklet, and we've interviewed a lot of people around this, we mentioned that holistic education, that lifelong learning. You know that we're in that space, and we're really passionate about that. But it's interesting. One of the other elements is about culture and strategy, and we acknowledge that we need a strategy for getting stuff done and a plan. But ultimately, we acknowledge and think that we start with culture, then we go to strategy. I know people like Peter Drucker have said this hundreds of times, thousands of times before us, but it seems like you're trying to build a culture that allows change norms and values, right? Which is what culture's about.
Yeah, and I think, there's lots of great organisations out there that are doing lots of things, and I feel like this is about exchanging knowledge, if you like, exchanging some of that, because there's no one set way to do it. But it is about doing it in a way that will make impact. And I think naturally you're changing and shifting that culture by doing good stuff and then getting the results back from it. None of this can be tick boxy. Otherwise we're going to damage education and we're going to damage our young people and we'll waste time in our businesses. But if we do things with intention and with purpose, that will naturally shift. It will shift that culture. If we enable our relatable role models within our organisations to speak to young people or people who've made a career path and then decided that it's not the right one for them, because there's no one straight path and there's no one route. It's okay I don't think it's about making a mistake. Someone on one of our podcasts the other week said it's not about failure, it's feedback. And sometimes it's just about taking a different path. That's what it's about. And for us, that's what we're committed to doing. Someone asked me recently what our superpower was, and I said, I think it's impatience. But on the other side, it's about cracking on and doing. And I think we can all talk about lots of things, but as a small micro organisation, we have so many connections and so many opportunities out there. We want to enable the opportunities so there are options, because sometimes you can say there's nothing for me, but actually we want to dispel that myth that it's grim up north and signpost to the opportunities within some of these great organisations.
So we always finish our podcast, well this season anyway, with 3 quickfire questions. So
Ready?
I'll do first one, then Steve, then me. So we say quickfire, but we're not particularly good at quickfire asking them, never mind you quickfire and answering them. So first one is this. If you could change one thing about education overnight, what would it be?
Do you know what I would do? I would want to embed this real life role models within the organisation. I would have more about real people coming in and getting education out into the world of work, to open people's eyes and to make those opportunities available for everyone. I've answered 7 different questions in that, but I suppose that inclusive opportunities.
What is the most exciting educational trend that you see emerging?
Oh, it's interesting. I think you're naturally going to lurch towards technology. But actually, I often think it's the simple things. I think it does sound daft, and I know it's something that we've done, but we're creating these virtual conversations, using technology just to enable simple one-to-one conversations. I don't think you can over-engineer things. Let's keep things simple and straightforward, because that will create actions.
For sure. And finally, who's your biggest inspiration in education?
In education, but I think this goes to the point that education is lifelong, right? Everyone, we're educating ourselves and we're learning every day. So, I'll always go back to my Northern Power nana. She made me believe I could do anything I wanted. I wanted to play football for Everton. There's a whole other podcast on that one, but is that making me believe I could? I think there's that person who, irrespective of what your qualifications are, or I wanted to be a vet because I'd read James Herriot books and then I realised I was really rubbish at science. But it's just that one person, my Northern Power nana, Isabella, she was the one who just made me believe I could.
Shout out to Northern Power Nana. And Simone, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us, and keep doing the work you're doing. It's important, and we'll hope you have a great rest of the day here at Brilliant Festival.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for having us on the podcast.
Cheers, Simone.
So welcome to another brilliant Edufuturist podcast. We're pleased to be at the Brilliant Festival in Liverpool, and we are joined by two guests today in this segment. Could you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about why you're here today?
Cheers, mate. I'm Steve Baker. I'm the CEO of the People's Learning Trust, which is a multi-academy trust, a family of schools linked to Everton Football Club.
I'm Matt Littler. I'm the founder of Arc Immersive.
Great, thank you. Well, thanks for joining us. So you're smack bang in the middle of education, smack bang in making things happen. We talk Edufuturists, about the future of education, but we actually also celebrate people that are doing it right now, and that's what you do. Talk about the partnership, the collaboration, and things that you're working on at the moment. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like.
Yeah, so I've always worked in schools. I've worked particularly with kids with challenging behaviour, and I figure that you do what you've always done, you get what you've always got, and it was a system that's broken. It doesn't work. It's not a one-size-fits-all setup for kids who are on the sort of the edges of society and the edges of education. So I took a chance and I removed punishment from my schools, and it worked. So all the schools that I've led had no punitive approaches. They've focused on relationships, and we ended up outstanding in all areas. And this summer we probably got the best results in the country. I got to know my friend Matt here, and he does some really innovative stuff using technology, and we wanted to combine my understanding of education and how to engage young people and Matt's understanding of technology, put that together to tackle one of the biggest problems that we face as a society.
That's it, what he said. Yeah.
Cheers, mate.
He's smashed it.
Yeah, just what he said. It's like a class. His answer. Yeah, his answer. He stole my answer.
Copy, literally like him in school.
Matt copies what I said. All copies what I write. No, Matt's an incredible guy. He set up a company called Arc Immersive with Jane, and they just do some incredible things. So if you look at education, using the old method, the old Victorian methodology that we have right across this country, it's outdated. We need to do something that's more engaging and get kids not just to be engaged, but to be bothered about what they're learning. We need to focus on 21st century skills, and using the immersive technology that Matt does helps not only engage the kids, it helps them retain that knowledge much better and develops new skill sets amongst them. So what we've been looking to do is try and create a project that will tackle knife crime, and using all the technology. And Matt, you'll be able to give us a better idea of what that is.
Yeah, obviously there's no better experience than lived experience. Like when you absorb modern media, you absorb it via your phone or via the TV. And if we were looking at, let's say, not to get too broad, but if we're looking at the war in Ukraine or what's going on in the Middle East, it's on a screen, it's on your phone, it's somebody else's problem. But when you're there, it's your problem, so you connect with it and you have an emotional connection to that space and what that person's saying to you. And in the same way that we're making eye contact now, that level of social science, those small idiosyncratic things, they're present in immersive media if it's done right. So our Knife Crime project uses that learning and that connectivity to enhance, emotional connection, empathy. So like film one that we've produced, takes the viewer on a tour of the response to a violent crime. So we go to the air ambulance, to the helicopter to speak to the paramedic. We go to the resus bay to talk to the nurse who's dealt with this over and over and over again. We go to the police station, to the custody sergeant who's seen young people come in, straight A students who've carried a knife for months and never used it, and that one time they have, all of a sudden they've gone from I'm Johnny or I'm Karen and now I'm a murderer. That's a big shift for someone, and they've seen it and it's horrible. So that's film one. Film one ends in a bereavement suite with two swan nurses, specialist bereavement nurses, explaining that this is where it ends. So that sort of ramps the emotional engagement. Film two, we speak to the families of victims, families who've lost children to knife crime, some as young as 12 years old, and they tell us, you stand with them, they tell us their truth in their own words, and they tell us and show and share with us their experience. And I think if that doesn't get you, nothing will. And then film 3, to try and create some longer term legacy, is a vocational demonstration by a brilliant surgeon called Nick Hill on bleed control. So, this whole thing's about stopping knife crime, stopping people carrying knives. It's not going away overnight. What can we do right now that might make a difference? And if every high school leaver in the UK understood bleed control, that's a seismic shift. And we might stop someone dying. And then the whole thing's been a success.
What we're doing is we're taking both a proactive and reactive approach. So we're proactively trying to stop the crime before it begins, but we're reacting, as Matt says, with Nick Hill's resources. We can train every child who watches this video on bleed control, on how to use an anticoagulant bleed control kit, on what to do if you are with someone who is stabbed, if someone has an accident. And could you imagine if we can weaponise that? We're not interested in empire building. We don't want any fame or fortune. This is a completely free resource for anyone who wants to use it. I think, interestingly, I was talking earlier, and there was a famous quote by Margaret Mead who said, "Never doubt that a thoughtful group of committed citizens can make a difference. Indeed, it's the only thing that can." That's all we want to do, make a difference, because we've seen knife crime and a blight on our communities, and we want to stop it.
I think it's one of the things that we've talked about often in our trends is around culture, and ultimately there's lots of strategies out there, there's lots of ways, and whether it's a plan or a strategy, but ultimately the culture has to change, and I think it's you working to change the culture within your organisation, but then also how can you demonstrate that once the culture is right to accept and change, that ultimately that can be beyond a silo of one trust, one organisation, one sector, one city, one region. I think that's where it is, and ultimately that whole thing of, so rather than trying to monetise it, there's lots of people monetising lots of different things. Ultimately, working in education is about making a difference. You want to make a difference, you go into education. You want to make money, you go into business. Ultimately, I think there's a marry of both, but ultimately making a difference is more transformational than any money that can bring anybody in.
Absolutely. We're going to be working with the University of Manchester. We'll do a 3-year longitudinal study to look at the impact of this project on the young people who we work with, but we think it's beyond that. It's not just, sort of year 10, upper key stage 2 and above. This could be used for anyone, anywhere, to educate them. We could put it out to every single adult in the country, and they will have an understanding of how to manage bleed if they see someone who's had an accident. The bottom line is we've got to make a difference because it's happening everywhere. It's not just about the kids who are perpetrating the crimes, it's about the others who are carrying for them. So we've seen that as a big issue, haven't we? The police have told us that girls are often carrying knives, so the boys will then go and stab someone.
Yeah, if you get caught with a knife, that's a criminal record, you'll fail DBS check, you never go on an holiday to America, you're never going to adopt anyone. That's a lifelong thing that will change your path. Just because someone said to you, here, carry this, you're less likely to get searched than me. But beyond that, it's about understanding beyond that moment of carry, beyond that moment of picking it up at the door on your way out, what it means. And I think using this as a delivery mechanism, using immersive as it, we do gain an understanding of what it means.
And I think that ties really nicely into that conversation where you've mentioned there about whatever age you are, whatever gender you are, it's not stereotyped into a certain place or a certain geographical postcode. There's a lesson to be learned. There might not be everybody picking up a knife, but everybody, or lots of people could have to deal with a bleed or could have to deal with those kind of elements. And I think that level of lifelong learning, that movement into there's a lesson that we can all pick up from this, I think is really powerful. So we always, on the podcast, ask 3 quick fire questions. Okay, so we're gonna go to them. First one is this: if you could change one thing about education overnight, what would it be?
I would try and remove the high stakes accountability in the system, and I would try and incentivise an inclusive approach. Because everyone wants to be inclusive, everyone says they're compassionate, everyone says they've got really inclusive values, but until we incentivise it, I just don't think it's happening.
Do you want me to do that as well? Right, okay, I could have used
you
your
can't
answer.
Copy me now,
no,
mate.
I can't copy, whatever he said, no. I'd like there to be more free resources like we're producing and delivering. I don't like the idea that vital knowledge like this is beyond the gatekeeping, beyond the paywall. If you can do something good, then you should do it for free. I understand that people have to keep the lights on, but with regards to this, with regards to young people dying in parks, let's not gatekeep that.
Few might be a stronger one, so you can steal his answer. What's the most exciting educational trend that you're seeing emerging?
VR. I can take people on a Thursday afternoon trip to SpaceX. I can teach you Spanish in a Seville orange market. We can create context. So learning Spanish in a Raynhill classroom on Wednesday is boring for some kids. Learning Spanish in a Seville orange market is essential knowledge because you've got to use it, right? That's what we can do. We can make every single lesson a field trip to wherever we need to be. And also, the way we can now commoditise knowledge in teaching, what we say at ARC is that using our technology, you can give your best lesson on your best day with all the consumables, all the contributors. You can teach it like you only ever had to teach it once. And that's the beauty of what we're doing.
For me, I'm going to copy his answer. There you go. No, I'm dead lucky. Before I was in education, I worked in a number of different sectors, and I've come in and I've been involved in some really innovative stuff. So I've advised the DFE, I've advised the Ministry of Justice, I've helped set up prisons, I've done all sorts of exciting things, including working with a billionaire to set up a place-based change project in North Bergenhead, which is phenomenal. So successful, Steve Rotherham's given it $5 million to go across every area. All of that isn't as exciting as this project that we've got with Matt and Jane at ARC. It is unbelievable. I think it will genuinely make a difference. The bottom line is, if we save one life, that's enough for us, but we think it's got the potential to save a lot of kids' lives.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, it's powerful. So, last one, and I'll come to you first, Steve. Who is your biggest inspiration in education?
My biggest inspiration in education. Can you go to Matt first, please? Honestly.
Like, not blowing smoke, Steve.
I'll
definitely.
stop.
No, like seriously, like you meet a lot of people, but looking at Steve's approach and his background, and I've seen Steve fall on his sword, and I've seen Steve bow out, and I've seen Steve push back. Yep, definitely Steve Baker. And that's not just because he stood next to me. It's my genuine opinion.
That's really kind. I can't really say anything after that, can I? Honestly, I can't.
That's super. It's good. It's lovely, and I think the fact is that somebody said in this interview today, when we asked them the question of their biggest inspiration, talked about the future generations as their biggest inspiration, and actually the work you're doing, and this project particularly, but that work is making so that can actually happen. Yeah. Or without stopping that happening, there's going to be 10, 15, 20, 100 young people that aren't going to get to see that, so it's powerful.
I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I'm going to anyway. So before I was in education, I was a war crimes investigator. So I was a forensic anthropologist with the UN, and I investigated the Bosnian genocide. And I've dug up the bodies, I've exhumed the war graves, I've done autopsies, I've held the victims' families who were sobbing, and I've helped repatriate some of the victims back to their families so they could be buried. I've seen the worst that humanity has to offer, and we've got to stop it. So that's why I do what I do, and that's why I work with great people like Matt and Jane at ARC, because we've got to make a difference, because it's not getting any easier out there.
What a magical way to end it. A magical way to end it. Is it magical? No, I think it's
powerful.
It's really powerful. I think ultimately it's that thing of purpose in education. Start with why, and if if the why is driving you, and continue to drive it rather than being a leader, ego, everything else that comes with it, it's a great way to follow. So thanks for joining us. Thanks a lot for listening to the wonderful snippets from Brilliant Festival. As we said earlier, if there's any that resonate, reach out to us and let us know. We'll do an extended version. Do not forget, tickets are available for Brilliant 2025. Go to the show note link and find and get your ticket there.
Perfect. And don't forget, if you haven't done so already, get your tickets for Uprising 2025. It's all available, but most importantly, the nominations are out and live, so you can celebrate those people that are pushing the envelope for the future of education, and we'll celebrate those as part of our awards ceremony. The link is in the show notes too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time.